Hi everyone, my name is Paul, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make a basic floor plan using Adobe Illustrator complete with title block and dimensions. Floor plans are drawing methods commonly associated with the environmental design field, and they are used to convey information both interior and exterior about your building. Specifically, they will often include information about overhanging roof lines, windows and door openings, stairways, key dimensions and labeling, the north point symbol, and a title block. Technical drawings are based on a set of standards that have been globally agreed upon by the International Standards Organization, or ISO. Some of these standards have been published by the VCEA in the Technical Drawing Specifications Handbook, which is freely available on their website. As teachers and students of visual communication design, we need to adhere to these standards when producing floor plans. Before we get started, we'll need the following: a concept or an idea for the actual building itself, a copy of Adobe Illustrator, in this case I'll be using version 2018, a copy of the Technical Drawing Specifications Handbook, which is freely available to download on the VCEA website, and I've provided a downloadable Illustrator document complete with floor plan assets. A link will be available in the description. Before we get started in making our floor plan using Adobe Illustrator, we're going to change some of the settings and preferences to help improve our workflow. But before we do that, we can open up the floor plan assets document that's been provided to you. If you look inside that document, you'll be presented with a number of different illustrations spread across several pages. All of these illustrations are freely available to use within your own floor plans if you wish. Down below, we have a title block, which conforms with the Technical Drawing Specifications Handbook and the rules within it. So if we select this title block using our selection tool, we can just copy that for now by hitting Command C or Control C on the keyboard. And we're going to place that into a new document. So we'll start that new document by going up to File, New. And we're going to use an A3 page, landscape orientation, and we'll just give this a name, Floor Plan. So when you're ready, you can hit Create. Now I've already created a new document. It's an A3 document. And on the right hand side here, I've just placed a number of screen grabs, and these are directly from the Technical Drawing Specifications Handbook. These just quickly allow me to get an idea of what the different sort of widths and sizes and dimensions of all these sort of common sort of items like exterior walls, doors and kitchens, and etc. So at a glance, I'm able to just check those measurements. But obviously you can download that document and check all the different dimensions and measurements in a little bit more detail. With the title block copied, we can now paste it into the new document by going up to Edit, Paste, or Command V or Control V on the keyboard. Now we need to place it in the bottom right hand corner and just give it enough space around the edges, approximately 10 to 20 millimeters. You just place it there. So now we're going to change some of the settings and preferences in Adobe Illustrator to help improve our workflow. To do that, if you're on a PC, you'll go up to Edit, and there should be Preferences within that menu there. But on a Mac, I have to go to Illustrator, Preferences, and we'll start off with General. So what we're going to do is make sure that Scale, Stroke, and Effects is turned on. And then we're going to go to Units, and we're going to change the stroke from points to millimeters, and that will just help us to, when increasing and decreasing the thickness of the stroke, to conform with the different measurements for the exterior and interior walls. We'll also go to Guides and Grids and make sure that a grid line is every 10 millimeters. Once you've done all that, then you can click OK, and then we're going to go up to View and Show Grid. So this will bring up a grid obviously on our document here that we can work with. And so for every dark line, or for every 10 millimeters or 1 centimeter, at a scale of 1 to 100, that would equate to 1 meter. So 1 centimeter would be 1 meter. Now we have to change the title block so the information is accurate. So I'll just zoom in. You can hit Command plus and minus, or Control plus and minus on the keyboard, or use the magnification tool. And I'm going to go to the T for Type tool. And you can change the floor plan or the title, the project title, and we could call this a nano house, whatever you would like. Now the scale is set to 1 to 50, but traditionally with floor plans we'll work at a scale of 1 to 100. So once again, for every centimeter on our canvas or in our document, that equates to 1 meter. The sheet size is A3, the north symbol. Now we can select this symbol here, and we can rotate it to point in any which direction that you like. Obviously, you can change the student name, the date in which this document was produced, and the page number. So I'll zoom back out, and now we're ready to get started. So for this basic floor plan, we're just going to use a combination of the shape tool and line tool. So if we head over to our toolbar, our shape tool is this one here. Now if we hold down the mouse button, you can actually get a range of different shapes, and in this case I'm going to be using the rectangle tool. Now before we do move on to actually creating our external walls, I'm going to head down to our stroke and fill options here. I'm just going to make sure that our fill is turned off. So if you select that so it's in the foreground and then select none, and I'm just going to make sure that I have a black outline to our rectangle. So I'll double click on here and I'll make sure it's just changed to a pure black color. So what we can do is we can actually click and drag to create our rectangle or our whatever shape that we want for our external wall or building. And as we're dragging out, you can actually see next to the cursor that there are some measurements that it offers us. So we can actually use that to get, I guess, a more precise measurement. So in this case, it's 190 millimeters by 69 millimeters. So we can select that if we wish. But what I'm going to do is just select this and I'll delete it. And instead, I'll select the rectangle tool and I'll just click once on the canvas, and you can actually punch in the width and height and get some exact measurements. So for instance, I can go 90 millimeters width, which is 9 meters at a scale of 1 to 100, and a height of, we'll just go 40. So if I select OK, now I'll be presented with a rectangle. It's a little bit more precise. So if I zoom in with Command plus or Control plus on the keyboard, you'll also find that the measurements are really made are really bound by this blue line here. And so when we increase the stroke goes either end of the blue line. So if we increase the stroke, for instance, obviously the exterior or the building is actually increasing in size. So you just got to be a bit mindful of that. So before we increase the size of the stroke, we're just going to get some more settings or palettes to help us to change some of the settings for our stroke. So if I go up to Window, Stroke, and it presents us with this palette here. So this palette's very, very useful, and we can get additional options to for additional features for our stroke. If we select Show Options here, we'll get a whole range of additional features that we can use. So with this line here, the align stroke is set to in the center here, but you can also move that on the inside of the blue line or the outside of the blue line. And perhaps like it might be a good idea to keep it on the inside of the blue line, so that would mean that the building from the exterior is exactly 9 by 4 meters. So another thing that we can increase and decrease is the stroke weight. So where we change the settings to millimeters, so it's a little bit easier to work with. So currently it's set to 2 millimeters, 3 millimeters. Now, the Technical Drawing Specifications Handbook states that it should be, the exterior wall should be 3 millimeters in weight or width at a scale of 1 to 100. So we've got it correct there at 3 millimeters, so we'll leave it there. Another way that we can add exterior or interior walls is to use the line tool. So if we head over to our toolbar, we can select the line tool. Don't forget, if you hold the mouse button down, you'll be presented with a number of different options, but I've got the line segment tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to place an interior wall through, in the middle of our building here. So if I click and drag, and if you hold down Shift, it will actually keep the line nice and straight. So if I click and drag a line, we've got now a wall placed right through the middle of our building. But if this is an interior wall, we need to decrease the size, and it should be at 1 millimeter in accordance with the Technical Drawing Specifications Handbook. So the next step is to add some doors and windows to this building, and to do that I'm just going to zoom into our structure. Now with this line here that is used for our interior wall, we can grab these anchor points and hold down Shift to keep it straight, and we can add access points that way if we like. We can move this down and obviously have an access point on the top side instead. we're going to run into a bit of an issue here with the exterior wall, which is one continuous line or a shape made up of 4 anchor points. So to break a hole through these, through this wall, what we're going to do is select it, and we're going to go up to Add Anchor Point tool, which is, it might be underneath the pen tool here. So if you hold the mouse button down on that tool there, we'll select Add Anchor Point tool. We're going to add not 1, but 4 anchor points. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then if I just zoom in a little bit further, I'm going to use our direct selection tool to select the 2 innermost anchor points. So select one, hold down shift, select the next one, and if I hit delete or backspace on the keyboard, it will punch a hole right through it. Now, just something to be very much aware of, that when you punch a hole through the exterior wall in this case, it's going to revert back to the default align stroke setting. So just keep an eye on that. So that is the align stroke to center. So we can't make any adjustments back to what it was before. So you need to adapt to that if necessary. So I'll just move that interior wall down. But now we have a hole through our wall. Alternatively, you could just place a white space over the top. If you go to rectangle tool, we could turn the fill to white and have no stroke. In actual fact, we could put a simple white shape over the top here. And that's also a great way to almost, in a sense, punch a hole through the exterior wall and prepare it for something like a door, for instance. Either way would be acceptable. So I'll leave it as is for now, but what we can actually do too, if you would like to get more precise measurements, bearing in mind the width of a door in accordance to the Technical Drawing Specifications Handbook is about 80 centimeters. So what we can then do is, I'll delete that, and if we select this, we can actually use the measurements here. So we've got 8 millimeters and 8 millimeters there. So that's the size of a conventional door, at least the hole for it. Now to create a door, we can actually go up to Floor Plan Assets and use the one that's already provided, or just simply create your own. To create your own, what we can do is head back to our document, and we can draw a simple line. Now if we click on our canvas, once again, we can put in a length of 8 millimeters on an angle which is straight in this case. And there it is there. Now we just got to turn the stroke back to black. And there it is there. Now I'm just making it a little bit thinner compared to the exterior wall. Might just bump it up to 1 millimeter there. And we can then rotate the line using the selection tool. I'm just hovering my mouse button just around the anchor point, holding down shift just to lock it in, and then we can place that on top of our document here and sort of nudge it into place. Then to add to this, what we can then do is get the pen tool and select this anchor point. We can add a little bit extra to this, and this will be like how the door sort of swings, that sort of curved line that attaches itself back to the exterior wall. So I'm just selecting once. Now I'm going to hold the mouse button down, holding down shift so it keeps it straight. And I'm going to stretch out these handles so that I get a nice sort of curve, which will then create our door just like that. Now I'm just going to hit escape on the keyboard just to cancel any more movements. And what you can actually do, just to get right into the details, is move these anchor points using the direct selection tool just to get a bit more accuracy there. We can obviously select this and adjust the stroke and width and so on and so forth, but that's looking pretty good. So if I go back, what I might do is just adjust that. So it's 0.5 of a millimeter, and that's looking pretty good. So the next step will be to add some windows. So traditionally windows will be almost like a rectangle that has a black outline with 2 additional lines through the middle. If we look back on our floor plan here, you can see an example of that. So if I go back to my document, so what we can do is we can use the rectangular tool, and what we're going to do is make sure that we have a black outline and a white fill. So we can get the white fill, and we can actually start dragging a window to whatever length you want and whatever wall that you like as well. So I'll place it here, and I'll zoom in, And this is where I'm just going to tinker with some of the stroke settings. I'll just make sure that that's on the inside in this occasion, just so it's sort of flush on the wall. And I'm just going to decrease the stroke to 0.25. That looks a bit better. And we're going to add 2 additional lines through the center at the same stroke weight. 1, hold down Alt and Shift to duplicate, and 2, and there's an external or a window for our external wall. We can obviously place this on any surface, and now that it is created, we can then just sort of adjust its width to whatever you want, whether it's a short window, small window, or a long window that stretches right across. So that's how you can create doors and windows. So with our basic floor plan in place, we're going to place some assets and some furniture into the document. But before we do, it's well worth having a look at the Technical Drawing Specifications Handbook, because it does give you some general measurements for things like doors, obviously, kitchen bench tops, island bench, bathroom bench, etc. And it's well worth sort of referring to this to help size or scale your assets or objects. So if we head back to our floor plan and we open up the floor plan assets document, you can choose any of these items to place into your floor plan. Just keep in mind that some of these objects here, particularly on this second page, are made up of individual shapes. So just to ensure that you get the entire asset, you're just going to make a selection around it, and it's well worth grouping the object. So select it, object, group. So that will mean every time you select it, and you select it once, you can move the entire object and it stays together. But for this tutorial, we'll just use this round table, complete with chairs on either corner. I'll select it once, Command C to copy, Command C to place. Now, the Technical Drawing Specifications Handbook doesn't give us specific measurements for tables in this case, so sometimes you may need to just basically make up those measurements, or you can find some general information from the internet. But in this case here, I'm just going to make a table that's about 1 to 1.5 meters in diameter. So to do that, I'm just going to grab these corner pins and scale it down, and then start to move that into place, making sure that I have enough room around it, obviously, for the chairs. So we can do that with just about any other object within the floor plan assets document. So we've got a couch here. We can select this, Command C to copy, and Command C to paste. Once again, you could get some general information off the internet as to how big a couch would be, at least in this case, a 3-seater couch, and we'll move that into place as well. So that's how we can apply or add some assets to our floor plan. So the next step will be to add some dimensions. So dimensions are constructed by referencing features in the following order. So the first line, or the line that's closest to the building, shows external features such as windows and other openings and external walls. The second line shows internal features such as internal rooms and wall thicknesses, and the third line shows the overall external building dimensions corner to corner. So before we add dimensions to our floor plan, we're going to go up to Window and Layers. We're going to introduce a new layer specifically for the dimensions. So everything at this current point in time is on layer 1. But what we can do is we can add an additional layer. We can double click on layer 2 and change the title to dimensions. And then we can lock layer 1, which is our floor plan plus the furniture. And we can now just focus our attention on the second layer being dimensions. So now what we'll do, we'll start with the top. So on the top face here, we're going to bring in some dimensions by using the line tool over here. So the line segment tool, click on that once. Now we just don't need a fill for this, so we'll just turn the fill off and just make sure that we have a black line for our stroke. So I'll just zoom in a little bit further and move some of these palettes around. And so what we're going to do is just start off with a projection line that extends beyond the actual building itself. And we can also use these purple sort of smart guides that pop up every now and again to help measure our building and construct our dimensions. So a projection line will extend beyond the building, but it doesn't touch the building itself. And what we're going to do is add 3 layers of dimensions similar to that of the example in the handbook. And for every line, we're going to give it 1 centimeter of space. So there's 1 centimeter, 2, 3, and then we're going to extend the projection line just a little bit further beyond that as well. We're just going to give it a consistent measurement, maybe about 0.5, maybe even a little bit thinner than that again, just to help differentiate between the actual building and the dimensions itself. And what we're going to do once we've got one projection line, we can then click, move, and hold down Shift and Alt at the same time to duplicate it to the other side of the surface. So we could easily do a copy and paste job with that though, but that's a nice easy way to copy and duplicate. I'm going to get the line segment tool and we're going to place 3 more lines in between. So 1 centimeter apart. So this will be the inside line. We can then click, drag, and hold down Shift and Alt at the same time, let go of the mouse button, create another one. Now if we hit Command D, we can duplicate that, do the exact same thing. Now we've got 3 dimensioning lines for this particular surface. So we're going to start with a third dimensioning line, which is the line that's dedicated to the overall external building measurements from corner to corner. So we'll start off on one end here to begin with, and what we're going to do is draw a 45-degree angled line approximately 3 millimeters long. Now these are typically used to terminate the dimensionings from end to end. So 145-degree line here, and so the center point should intersect with the projection line and the actual dimensioning line itself. I might zoom out and place that on the other side as well by clicking, dragging, holding down Alt and Shift and place it from corner to corner. So the next step will be to add measurements, and we can do that by going over to the Type tool and selecting once on our canvas. And this is where we're going to add the measurements. In this case, we're going to work with millimeters. And in this case, or for this example, we had a 9 meter or 9,000 millimeter long room or building by 4 meters or 4,000 millimeters. So I can just type in 9,000. Now obviously this is a little bit big, so we can scale that down by going up to the character feature up the top here. We can scale that down. If we highlight it, scale it down maybe to about 6 points. We want to make sure that we keep that consistent across the board, and we also want to make sure that we're choosing a font, a sans serif font as well. So a Myriad Pro would be suitable for this. So we can put that in place, and that needs to be in the middle of the dimension or the measurement from one point to the other. So the second dimensioning line will be for internal features, including the rooms and wall thicknesses. And so to do that, we'll zoom into the second dimensioning line. And what we're going to do is borrow some of these lines from the top here. So I'll just click, drag, and hold Alt to duplicate that, or you can copy and paste it. Now we need to dimension the thickness of this wall, which we use the 3 millimeter thickness or stroke. But if we have a look at these specifications here, we've got exterior wall is 270, so we'll punch in those details. So if I head back and zoom back in, so with dimensions and when we add measurements inside or within this line here, what we're going to do is add not only a 45-degree line, we can use the smart guides once again to line things up, but we're also going to add an additional line here which goes directly up and down, so a vertical line about this at 3 millimeters in length, so it looks basically like that. And what we can do is we can select them together, go up to Object and Group, and then that way they're kind of stuck together every time you select them. And so this is where you need to line it up and try to get make sure that you're dimensioning the external thickness of the wall. So we'll put that into place, and we can once again borrow some of the assets from the top dimension down below here, and we can use 270 and place that in there, just try to get it sort of falling into place. And you've got to make sure that it's obviously nice and consistent as well, and if necessary you can select them both and scale things down, just making sure that they're in the center of the 2 points. So we're just going to do pretty much exactly the same to the other side as well, and we can once again just copy and paste these lines over to this side. So we'll place that one there, and we'll place this one to dimension that or measure the thickness of that external wall. And being that it's the same thickness, we can place the 270 there as well. And obviously you can sort of shift that into place so it's a more precise. So the last measurement that we need to place is the one from the inner 2 points. So that will make it 9,000 minus 270, which is 8,460. So the third and final dimensioning line is for external features such as windows and other openings and external walls. So to assist us with this, we're going to use another tool to help us measure certain surfaces or parts of surfaces. So if we head over to the eyedropper tool, and if you hold the mouse button down, we can get the measuring tool, which allows us to then measure from one point to another. So it opens up that palette, and now I'm getting some information. At least in this case, the width is changing. I'm just going to simplify this a little bit. We're going to call the width 4,000. So to then dimension that, what we're going to do once again is borrow some of these dimensions or these assets. I'm just going to use our smart guides to help us to put it into place. So there's one. I'm just copying and pasting these over. So we've got to dimension the window, make sure that that's in place, and we measured it out to 4,000. So put that in place and put it in the middle, 4,000. Now to assist us with the other two measurements on either side, not forgetting that we need to terminate these dimensions here and here. So to find out what these measurements are, once again we can use the measuring tool to measure from point A to point B. And here we're just going to round it up to 2,700. Place that there. And on the other side, we can use our measuring tool again to measure from there to there. Just to simplify it, we'll call it 2,300. And that equates in total to 9,000. So when dimensioning, we have all four sides of the building that we can work with. So at the moment, we've got dimensions up the top. And depending on the complexity of your building itself, you may need to include other dimensions, particularly on the side, the bottom, and on the right-hand side. And so we can use that space, and we can use these assets to copy and paste, and we can place those underneath, if you wish, as a bit of a starting point, or you can sort of start it from scratch. But one thing to take note of is that the numbers really need to be facing upwards in this case. And you only want to rotate the page to the right once. And so when we add dimensions to the left and right hand side of the object, just say for instance, if we move it over here and place them there, the dimensions and the numbers make sense. Like you rotate the page once and you can view them. But it will need to be the exact same way on the other side as well. So if we bring these around to the other side and rotate them around, holding down Shift just to lock it into place. Now, if we had numbers on both sides, they need to be sort of facing the one way when you rotate the page once. And so in this case, we'll need to zoom in and rotate these around and place them above the line that way as well. It's the same with these dimensions or these measurements on the bottom. We need to place these, rotate them around and place them on the top. Here's a quick example of how those dimensions would look in a finished example. Now if we head back to our document, what I might do just for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll just turn off the dimensions. Now if you're working with a very small dwelling or a singular room, a scale of 1 to 100 will look very small on an A3 page. If you like, you can go over to the type tool. We can change that title block. Now we're just got to make sure that that layer is unlocked so we can edit it and change this to 50. That will essentially mean that we are going to double the size of this drawing itself. So if I highlight this drawing and we go up to Object, Transform, Scale, we can change Uniform to 200. Just making sure that you've got scale, corners, and scale, stroke, and effects checked. You can actually preview that, and it basically doubles the size, and then you can commit to that by pressing OK. So that makes it look a little bit more presentable on an A3 page. So that's it for this basic tutorial on how to use Adobe Illustrator to create simple floor plans. Thanks for listening. My name's Paul. I'll see you later.